Child Find activities include all students, highly mobile children, all children with disabilities, and students placed in private and religious schools by their parents. Children from birth to age 3 may be eligible for early intervention if the child is experiencing development delays or if the child has a physical or mental condition that has a high probability of resulting in developmental delay. If found eligible with a 25% or more delay in any of these areas, the child will be provided services through an Individual Family Service Plan, or IFSP. Once a student turns 3, the focus is shifted from home to the school setting. Delivery of specially designed instruction in order to access the appropriate curriculum is critical to meet the unique and individual needs of the child that result from the disability. Collaborative decision-making provides a framework for educators, parents, and community representatives to solve problems and support student achievement and educational success. It is a proactive approach that emphasizes early intervention, research-based practices, collaborative teaming, and ongoing progress monitoring. Some students may experience behavioral concerns that interfere with their learning process. Following a functional behavioral assessment, the team will develop a structured behavior intervention plan. If your child is continuing to exhibit learning difficulties after early intervention and supports have been implemented and an educational disability is suspected, the child can be referred to the special education team to determine eligibility for services. The first step is to review multiple sources of data to determine whether there is a suspicion of an educational disability.
And the purpose of our meeting here today is to look at some data, to review some data concerning your child, Christian, because we suspect some sort of possible disability. And he was referred to us due to some possibly academic concerns in the areas of mathematics and his written expression. I have a parental rights booklet here for you all to take a look at. It's the Maryland Procedural Safeguards Notice. You don't have to look at it right now, but when you get a chance at home, take a look at it, thumb through it, Mr. Ramirez, and you and your wife, and you can discuss it. And if you have any questions later on, feel free to call us back.
Thank you.
And at any time during this meeting, you're free to ask any questions. I know a lot of times acronyms are used and you may not understand, but that's okay. That happens quite often. The purpose here basically is we are all here as a team, and we're here to assist in making sure that Christian is the best academic student possible. We'd like everyone at this point to introduce themselves.
I'm Chris Mason-Gardini. I'm the special educator here. It's very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Hi, I'm Rose Jones. I'm the speech pathologist. I'm also going to be the recorder for this meeting. I'll be taking minutes.
Hi, Marty McLeaf. I'm his third grade classroom teacher, and we've met before.
Hi, I'm Laura Merritt. I'm the school psychologist.
Okay. I'm Christian's mom.
I am Christian's father.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We can begin.
Note the active participation from all team members, including the students' parents. There are 2 possible outcomes from an IEPA. The team may determine that, after a review of the information, no educational disability is suspected and no additional information is needed. The second outcome may be that the team determines additional information is needed to determine eligibility. In this case, a Student Evaluation Plan, or SEP, would be developed. The IEP team members who will conduct the evaluations discuss the areas they will assess and what information they are seeking from their evaluation. Thus, your consent is required prior to conducting any standardized assessment or information that has been recommended as a part of the student evaluation plan. In this, as in other ways, parents are critical members of the IEP team.
And what she saw was that he was struggling at that point. He wasn't able to independently complete the assignment. And while there was a writing portion of it, he really struggled there. I did go over to him at that point, and he shared verbally with some hesitations again, but was able to get his ideas out, and then I recorded them for him. So she saw the same types of behaviors when she came in to observe.
So in light of all of that, what we're going to be doing is requesting your permission to do some assessments on him, to see what are his strengths, what are his challenges, what can we do to find out his ability and to find out what his level of achievement is right now. So that's a process that we call developing a student evaluation plan. And that's when all of us as a multidisciplinary team sit down just as we are and we determine what tests we're going to be using and who's going to be doing that to help your child.
Once a child is referred, the evaluation process must be completed within 90 calendar days. It is important to note that if a parent refuses consent for initial evaluation, the student is not eligible for any services or protections of the IDEA and is not entitled to FAPE. After completion of standardized assessment, the IEP team reconvenes to consider the results of the recommended assessments and determine eligibility for special education services. Each evaluator discusses the results of their formal standardized assessment. Based on these assessments, classroom performance, curriculum evaluation, and other relevant information, the team determines eligibility for special education services.
And he scored in the below average range in the area of mathematics, and he scored just a teensy weeny bit better in the area of math fluency. So he doesn't really seem to have as yet mastered the basic facts like so. So that kind of impedes him a bit. He has the ability to count, he has the ability to demonstrate comparing numerals, he could add and subtract. When he had manipulatives in his hands, he was able to do some activities and problems involving time and money. So those are all strengths. Those are wonderful things that he seems to have down. What he does have difficulty with is measuring, using a ruler, looking at bar graphs and pie charts when we're doing representational math. He had difficulty in general with just word problems. So word problems are when it's a story. We tell a little story and they have to solve it using a mathematical strategy. So he has to find out what is it that they're asking, what operation are we going to use to solve that problem, and then solve it. So he did have some difficulties with that. When we were doing timed tests for addition and subtraction, he was fluent with that. He was able to do that. He had some difficulty subtracting and multiplying, both with fluency and accuracy. I did notice sometimes he seemed to mess up and sometimes add when he should have subtracted. You just mix up those things, you get into a groove and you just keep going. So he had a little bit of struggle with that. He doesn't seem yet to have mastered place value with addition and subtraction. So 2 and 3 digits, those big numbers, he has some difficulty with that. It's third grade. It's challenging. He needs to just keep working on that. And once I think he gets some of those basic facts going, that should be all right. In the area of written language, he had a great deal of difficulty combining words to make sentences. He seems to struggle in this area. Maybe taking his thoughts and bringing them down and putting them into a coherent sentence. He did have trouble with spelling. He has trouble remembering to capitalize at the beginning of a sentence and to put an ending punctuation in. So those are things that he struggled with. He doesn't always have the correct spacing between his letters as well as between his words, so they smush up together. And he has some details. If he tells you the story, he's great. But if he has to write it down, it's a lot to write down all that stuff. So he doesn't want to, or he has difficulty with the spelling, and that negatively impacts him as well. So we did have some difficulty in that area. So his spelling was in the below average, but at the very tippity top of the below average range. But he had some difficulty with spelling words that follow a pattern.
Excuse me. Sorry.
So overall, it seems like the part that impacts him most in the area of writing was putting all those thoughts and words together to make a coherent sentence, which is also the basis for writing paragraphs, to be able to explain what he knows across content areas, not just in writing in the reading area, but in science and social studies as well as math and PE. So he, let me turn the page for us. His standard scores were in the average range for just knowing the ability to write his alphabet. Math fluency was average. His score was in the very poor range in the sentence composition area, which we've talked about. And he was in the below average range in the different areas of numerical operations, spelling, written expression, and fluency. It's following everything that Mrs. McLeaf was saying that he did in the classroom. So it's good that we brought him up because this is where his area of ability is. Do you have any questions or comments about that? I'm
Yes,
sure this is replicating what's going on at home,
Right.
those struggles with homework too.
Right.
Yes.
I would like to know about the fluency. What do you mean by fluency in math? Like how fast he's responding to you,
Yeah.
or
Those
how?
are timed subtests.
Okay.
So we gave
So
him
that's what that means.
Yeah.
Thank you.
good question. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
asking.
Thank you.
I think now we'll move on to the observation.
Right, he was observed in my classroom as well. As we had shared with you, not only did we want to see how he did in the testing, but we wanted somebody else to come in and see how he was doing in the classroom with these skills. And he was able to read the poem out loud and was able to discuss in a large group a little bit about the theme. But then when he was sent off to complete a written task, that's when they saw that he had more difficulties. The spelling was a little bit difficult. He was forgetting to capitalize as he started, and he just really wasn't able to get a whole lot down. It was very slow to get information down.
That replicates what went on in the assessment too.
Okay.
Right, and then they also watched him in math. It was a problem-solving activity that they actually saw in a group. And he did not participate a whole lot at that point. He was pretty withdrawn and quiet, seemed somewhat uncertain as to how to proceed with the problem-solving process and getting his ideas out verbally to share with the group. Any questions about what was seen in the classroom? Pretty similar to what we had talked about before.
Correct.
Yes. And again, it's the frustration, I think, because he can't, or feels like he can't do it. So it's the same thing that we're still seeing at home.
Right.
So yeah, that pretty much mirrors what you're saying when you help him with homework and that sort of thing.
Yes.
We just would like for him to be independent, to be able to do this on his own and not get frustrated as well.
Can he get his thoughts out? Can he speak expressively? And it looks at 3 different areas. The first area looks at the frequency of the times that he stops. In other words, how often does a stuttering event occur? Is he repeating sounds? Is he repeating words? Is he repeating whole phrases? The second piece looks at the duration. If he's repeating a sound, sun, how often is he doing that and how long does it take? Is he holding it for 2 seconds? Is he holding it for 5 seconds? Does he stop and move on to something else? And the third area is looking at his behaviors physically.
Such a fun kid to work with. He really was. He has a wonderful sense of humor. And he was very cooperative when we worked together, so I really enjoyed spending some time with him. But the first thing I did actually before I went and actually met Christian was I went into the classroom and I did a classroom observation. And I was looking for how focused he was he completing his work, how was he completing his work. And what I noticed for Christian was a lot of the times he would be called on to answer. He wasn't necessarily very sure of his answer during math class. A lot of times, for instance, he would give one off of the answer. So for instance, if the answer was supposed to be 24, he might say 23 or he might say 25. So just trying to get the accuracy of that math fact was a problem for him. And I think that's something that we saw.
That was
But
something
he
I
knows
saw
his
in my
numbers,
test.
right?
He does know his
Knows
numbers.
But again, remember we talked about he doesn't have those facts right down. They're
Right.
not firmly embedded there. Takes him a little while.
Okay.
Do you think that part of it was also how he feels about speaking in front of the class?
For one question, he did have to speak, and that could have been a factor. The other question, he was actually drawing pictures on a board to represent the numbers, and even then, even when he was making the drawing, he was one off. That's when the answer was supposed to be 24, and he had 23. So we can see that that automaticity of getting that
Right.
answer is still something that he's working on. When it was time for classwork, he was really, you could see that he was trying to do it, but there are also times you'd catch him looking around the room. And sometimes we might view that as, well, he's not focused or he's not paying attention. Really, for Christian, it looked like he was trying to really figure out what he should be doing at that point in time, or that he was stuck on a problem.
And something I noticed during testing is he scanned the room. He was looking for environmental cues. In the classroom, he has multiplication charts, he has he has the letters up there, and he has the sounds, and he knows how to make that connection. But in the room where I assessed him,
He didn't have any
he
of those.
didn't have any of
cues.
that stuff. How about you?
No.
No, so that could be why he was scanning.
And he definitely does, I would say, a lot of that during math.
Yeah.
Definitely looking for some
is
resources to
good.
help him during the math time, which is more difficult than the reading time for him right now.
Okay.
Do you have any questions about that piece so far? What I did, I actually worked with Christian 2 times outside of the classroom. I pulled and he came and worked with me. And I gave a thinking or reasoning test, or an IQ test. And that was, again, looking at different sets of skills that he has. Now, when I give this test, there are 4 areas that I look at. And usually, it makes an overall score. For Christian, on this test, the overall score isn't really a good picture of what he can do. He had areas that he did very well in and areas that he really struggled in. So when I talk about this, it's going to be more about his areas of strengths and needs instead of one overall number that really explains his skills. Okay?
So what do you mean by thinking and reasoning?
Thinking and reasoning
Yes,
is
what do you look into when you are assessing him with that?
It's
or that
different
area?
ways that he would use information to solve problems. So for instance, the first area of information is called verbal comprehension. So it's using words, using his knowledge of definitions, vocabulary, how words...
There is a very important discussion that takes place once the data is reviewed as part of an initial eligibility determination. The team first has to identify whether your child meets the definition of one of the eligibility categories. Then the team must identify an area or areas of impact from the disability. Finally, the team must determine whether the provision of special education is needed in order for the student to access the curriculum and make meaningful progress. The purpose of the re-evaluation process is to determine the continued existence of an educational disability requiring special education services, determine whether a different or additional educational disability is impacting your child, or to determine present levels of academic achievement and functional performance if classroom-based information is not sufficient. Please note that re-evaluations or assessments are not conducted for the purposes of College Board testing, private insurance, or private school or college entry. For more information, refer to the Anne Arundel County Public Schools e-Handbook for Special Education.